What is going on, my good people? Welcome back to the channel. This is Unnecessary Rambling. I appreciate y'all for stopping by. I appreciate y'all for tuning in to talk the video game news of the day. So we still got some of that Gamescom kind of drip feed rollout to go over here today. A lot of, once again, smaller news items to discuss. I don't think it'll be another 55-minute long episode. I promise I'm trying to keep these things down to about 30 minutes or so. But yeah, we still got a lot of stuff to go over. So I appreciate y'all for stopping by and tuning in. Let's get after the news. So we got some new information about a few of the games coming from PlayStation's Middle East and North Africa Hero Project, and we'll kind of break these down one by one, but just out the gate I want to say I think it's so important that we're getting a varied kind of rollout here with different countries being supported with these projects and PlayStation kind of going in and finding these blossoming markets on a grassroots level. And because like right now with the China Hero Project, we're going to get a lot of games that look a lot like Black Myth Wukong. You know what I mean? Games of that ilk. Guy running around in fantasy or fantasy adjacent world with a big sword hitting monsters. And it's like, that's dope as fuck. That's kind of one of the main sources of inspiration from that market. But now with like the North Africa Hero Project, the Middle East Hero Project, and these different countries and regions being supported, it's like, okay, cool. What are we going to see? Like, what are their main sources of inspiration going to be? And like, what are those games going to look like in comparison to the China Hero Project and in comparison to one another? It's just having, I think it's obviously great for these countries, but even more, it's just fucking great for us. You know, like the player, it's great for the player that we're going to be getting a lot of varied content from new blossoming markets. And yeah, so I just want to give a shout out there. I think this was this whole initiative, the China Hero Project, the Middle East, North Africa Hero Project, I think these are all really smart moves to go and fund games in these blossoming game development countries and regions. And yeah, so we got a few to go over here. You have a futuristic heist game called Red Bandits, and it's coming out of Saudi Arabia. Not a ton of details about these games, but you have like a Limbo inside inspired game called NC Solution coming out of the United Arab Emirates. And then you have a Forgotten City styled roguelike with like dialogue choices and branching narrative points, and it is set in like a superhero universe, and that's coming out of Tunisia, and the game is called Perfect Run. And then finally you have a rhythm-based puzzle game where you're trying to escape some spooky mansion, and it's coming out of Bahrain, and the game is called A Cat's Manor. So, I mean, kind of out the gate, as I'm looking through this lineup here, it's kind of surprising to me that seemingly all of these games are single player. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm glad that they're single player, you know, but it's, when I think about PlayStation's failed live service initiative, I do think that something like this probably would have been the smarter play to, instead of wasting Bluepoint to a God of War, you know, live service game, or instead of wasting Naughty Dog's time and all these different first-party studios, instead of wasting Ben's time and all these different first-party studios, like, it probably would have been a smart play to find partners to work on those games for you. And you know, just kind of create talent in these different markets who have a specialized focus on that style of game. But regardless, like, don't get me wrong, I am absolutely not complaining. I will happily take some single-player games from these different regions, from these different countries. And yeah, shout out to the PlayStation various hero projects going on. And then we have some information here regarding Hideo Kojima, where he's saying that I'm not planning to do Death Stranding 3 at the moment because the ending of Death Stranding 2 is my finale of 1 and 2, but I already wrote the concept for Death Stranding 3, so I have that in data. I hope that someone will create it for me someday. So Hideo Kojima kind of talking about the idea, the potential of a Death Stranding 3. I don't think that Death Stranding 3 really makes a lot of business sense from like Sony's standpoint. I don't really think that it would make a lot of sense for them to get involved with Death Stranding 3. It's just so damn expensive, you know, with not a mass, like, it doesn't have this massive amount of broad appeal. And when you're making games that cost hundreds of millions of dollars, you're going to have to sell 10 plus million copies on all of them to make your money back. And, you know, I know that there were reports a while back that Death Stranding 1 had sold like 19 million copies, but I think that got kind of some mixed messaging in there, because I think it was actually 19 million players, with it being on, you know, Game Pass and PlayStation Plus, which, you know, those are still good numbers even for being on a subscription service. Having 19 million people access your game, that's fucking awesome. But I can't really find any like concrete sales data for Death Stranding 1. But Death Stranding 2 right now is estimated to have sold like right around 1.3 million copies in its first month on the market. So not bad at all, but also probably not worth greenlighting a third game, if I'm being honest. You know, where you're looking at God of War Ragnarok sold 5 million copies in 1 week. Spider-Man 2 sold over 2 million copies in 24 hours. Forbidden West, I mean, sold over 8 million copies in a year. And Shuhei Yoshida has been on record saying, like, they were kind of disappointed. You know, PlayStation higher-ups were kind of disappointed with the fall-off from Zero Dawn to Forbidden West. And that sold 8 million copies in a fucking year. You know, Death Stranding isn't really anywhere in that realm in terms of sales figures. So it's kind of on par, like in my mind. I think of it like somewhere in that realm of like a Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart or an Astrobot, more than something, you know, like one of those God of War, Horizon, Spider-Man, Last of Us. It's more than like a Returnal. It's definitely got more value to it than a Returnal. And I think even just the association with Kojima, like if he really wanted to make a Death Stranding 3, it's probably worth making it. You know what I mean? Like it's probably worth just keeping him happy and having him work on exclusive content for your system. Because if you're still in the business of selling consoles, which PlayStation is, like, you gotta have these partnerships. You know what I mean? Even if it is kind of a niche market, and that's the beauty of being in the, at least from our standpoint, the beauty of, you know, as a player, whenever someone is so invested in the hardware, they will kind of greenlight these niche games, because even if that only appeals to 1 or 2 million people, that could be another 1 or 2 million people buying the hardware just for those weird ass games. You know what I mean? And so there's like different kind of metrics beyond just sales data. So yeah, I mean, right now I would assume all eyes and ears and hands are on Fizzant and OD, and probably more OD right now. I think that hopefully will come out in the next couple years. I'm assuming that game has to be a little bit bigger than, you know, we kind of understand right now, because if it was going to be just this really small cloud-based game, you would think that it would probably have already released. So maybe this is going to be kind of a bigger, more direct third-person survival horror style title, which that had been leaked in the past as well. So I would be very, very much on board for OD kind of being more in that realm of like a legitimate PT spiritual successor or what have you. But yeah, you know, it's I think that Fizzant is that's why you greenlight Death Stranding 2, right? Even with Death Stranding 1 not being like this mass appealing fucking 20 million copies sold style title, like, you greenlight it because you know that creator can create games of that ilk. You can get a 20 million copies sold style title out of that mind, but it's like, yeah, let's grease the wheels a little bit. Let's make him happy with Death Stranding 2, and then let's get back to some espionage spy thriller shit with Fizzant. So very, very excited to see Fizzant in the future. And next up we have, oh boy, yeah, we got some good shit here. So rumor has it that Resident Evil Code Veronica remake is going super well, like RE4 levels of good, and the team is very confident in what they're making. This is coming from Dusk Gollum, Aesthetic Gamer over there on Twitter, Aesthetic Gamer 1. And so Code Veronica, going super well with the same kind of lead talent, the same director from RE2 and 4 kind of spearheading, that team spearheading the project for the Code Veronica remake. Dude, this is really exciting to me. I should also say here, unfortunately, Resident Evil 0 is supposedly hitting some roadblocks in development currently, which I don't know. That's a bummer, of course, but I will say in terms of Code Veronica, this doesn't really surprise me all that much. I think Code Veronica is genuinely one of the best Resident Evil games ever made, like as is. It literally perfected the tank-based horror game mechanics, in my opinion. I do think there are some things tonally that should be altered, and I think that if you kind of perfect that, if you perfect the tone, you are in business, dude. Because, and then they even talk, Dusk Golem even talks about this with Steve. Steve fucking sucks, man. I know some people appreciate the camp and the charm, but it's such a fucking black eye to that game's overall like atmosphere and tone. It's one of the creepiest, darkest games in the history of that franchise, in my opinion. Like, there's incest being hinted at. It's so uncomfortable, man. Alfred and Alexia, they are so goddamn spooky, and it's just this very deep dive into mental illness on like such a heartbreaking level, like such a surprisingly shocking level for Resident Evil to really dive into. They talk about like Alfred, the cross-dressing in there, and like I know that that's something that probably Capcom is going to want to look at and potentially remove because of today's current climate or whatever, but I think that a lot of that shit, the incest and the themes of incest, the themes of the cross-dressing, and like, I don't think that, like, you look at it on a surface level and it's like, okay, well, that's gross, probably get rid of this, or, oh, that's maybe offensive, get rid of that. But I think if you look at it slightly deeper, it's like, dude, he is so obsessed. Alfred is so obsessed with Alexia that it's leading to this kind of just really, really fucking bizarre state of psychosis that he's in, where he is like, it's not that he's just cross-dressing, it's that he is like trying to fit himself into her image, almost like this deity, styled figure that he is viewing her as, like this religious sort of, it's a very dark obsession, and I think it's the most unsettling game. I know RE7 has the jump scares and has like the very overt horror in your face, but like, man, Code Veronica is so like, it is dark, man. It is so fucking weird and unsettling, and like, I get that that's not, Resident Evil doesn't operate in that camp as much as like Silent Hill does, but I do think there's some shit about Code Veronica. Like, if they are able to alter it tonally, and like Dusk Golem's talking about on Twitter, saying, they're going to go in and kind of try to fix Steve's character a little bit so he's less, I don't know, like, he's just got fucking weird, goofy ass vibes, and they're saying, or Dusk Golem's saying, he's going to come across a little bit more sincere in the remake, and I think that will be very beneficial to the game's overall tone. And but other than that, like, I think that you have something on your hands here where it could be that wake-up moment where people play Code Veronica, this remake, because that'll be millions of people's first time playing Code Veronica. It was on the Dreamcast back in the day. Nobody owned a fucking Dreamcast. And then it came to PS2 later on, but it just didn't have that. Like, Resident Evil's popularity right now is at an all-time high. Resident Evil has never been more popular than it is right now. And I think this could be their Silent Hill psychological horror styled Resident Evil game, like the darkest of the dark that they ever kind of delve into. So yeah, I'm really, really, really damn excited to see more on this. And they're talking about this is going to drop in 2027 and then 0 in 2028. And we've kind of talked about like RE5 probably 2030, RE1 2029, the remake of RE1. And that's the thing where, I promise I'll jump off this because I've talked about it 100 times, but I have seen on Twitter a lot lately in regards to like the Metal Gear Solid 3 remake, people being like, well, if you're a true fan, you don't want it remade. It's already been perfected. And it's like, guys, y'all are old. Hey, listen to me. Slow down. Close your eyes. Open your ears. You're old. Take a deep breath. It's okay to admit you're old, because I'm old as well. And I was in that exact same spot with Resident Evil 2, the remake. And I played through Resident Evil 2, the remake, and I was just like so disappointed. I was like, man, where's the charm? Where's the light, colorful kind of vibe of RE2? It's so dark and grim, and it's like there's none of that same camp, and it has none of the same sort of effect on me from like a visual kind of, just from a visual standpoint. The sensory, like, it doesn't spark that same sensory kind of, I don't know, nostalgic memories that the original did. But at the same time, it's like, dude, you gotta understand that, like, I wanted the Resident Evil 2 remake to literally just be like the RE1 remake. And it took me some time to come around on this, where I was like, man, you can't do that. You can't do that in 2025. You know what I mean? A whole generation of people who just didn't grow up with those mechanics at all, and they're more familiar with the over-the-shoulder third-person shooters of today. And it's like, you'll see people say, well, it's art. You should be able to appreciate art as it is. And it's like, yeah, I appreciate fucking Picasso and I appreciate fucking Citizen Kane, but I'm not an active participant in those works of art. I'm not having to engage with those on a mechanical level. I'm actually having to push the character forward in these games. You know what I mean? So like, and I've talked about it with Loon, where he didn't grow up with these games, and anybody under the age of really 30 didn't grow up with these games at all. You know, these games came out in 1996 when they started like really proliferating the market with Resident Evil 1. And I mean, I get it. You know, I get that people are a little bit bummed out about probably the high likelihood that we never see a tank-based survival horror Resident Evil game, mainline game, ever again. But I don't know, man. Like, I do think these games need to be remade so that they can go on to sell 10, 15, 20 million plus copies for, you know, like RE4, I think is already pushing like 12 million copies sold. It's fucking crazy. That game came out in 2023. Like, that these games are appealing on a totally different level with a new perspective, and I just don't really understand wanting to prevent Capcom's success there. Like, these games are great. Let's get it to new people. And sure, it would be wonderful. Like, I would love if everybody could kind of take themselves back to 1996 and play these fixed camera games and tank-based games and be like, oh my God, I totally see why they did that. And I can understand the kind of artistic reasoning behind locking these camera angles in and then the zombie appearing. And it's like, holy shit, you know, the kind of jump scare nature that doesn't feel as cheap as it does today in the full 3D spaces. Like, I get all of these things, and I appreciate all of these things. My fucking Resident Evil 2, like, that is God tier to me. There's never been a better Resident Evil game than RE2, the OG from 1998. But at the same time, like, I do understand that I'm an old man. I'm getting older, and you got to, and it's not like you're trying to appeal to 10-year-olds, but you're trying to appeal to that like 16 to 29-year-old demographic. And unfortunately, a lot of us just aren't a part of that, which sucks to admit. We're getting older, but we are. And but that's cool though. Like, my whole thing is like, we should be welcoming in new fans to our favorite franchises and like allowing them to play it in a new way. And then if we want to play it, like, it's so dope now that RE2 and 3 are just playable on the PS5 finally, and RE1 the original and the remake, and Metal Gear Solid 1, 2, and 3. And like, I think it's just important to preserve these classic games, but also figure out new ways for new fans to get introduced to them. So yeah, I'm all for these remakes, man. Yeah, I guess that's a full fucking vomit of my thoughts on the whole situation with the, you know, state of the Resident Evil, the Resident Evil verse. I did, here we fucking go, just rambling my damn brain out. I watched Resident Evil Death Island last night. I don't know what sparked that, but I just wanted to watch Resident Evil Death Island. And It's kind of wild. A lot of what takes place in this, I don't know, hour and 30-minute long animated movie is really kind of all I want for like a big culmination kind of moment for the series in the games. Like these key characters that we've all grown to love over the last 30 years. Like, I don't know. I'm hoping Resident Evil 9 has a little bit of that in it. Like, I understand they don't want to be overly fan servicey and overly dependent upon that because, once again, when you cater to fans from 30 years ago, who are all 30, 40 years old and older, like, you risk alienating that audience that is going to be able to support your franchise for the next 30 years. But I don't know. I just love how overly fan servicey these animated movies and shows are. They cater directly to the vein of the old heads who have been around for the full run. And yeah, it's nothing but Leon and Claire and Jill and Chris and Rebecca, and like there's zero newcomers who you're having to get to know. I just fucking love it. And also, well, you do have a cool ass new villain in there. And then that's something I really want from RE9 as well. We got to establish better villains. In like, you got cool monsters, but you don't necessarily have cool human villains. And not cool, but like compelling human villains. So yeah, and I am glad that like with RE9 we're going back to, you're going back to the roots to some degree with Alyssa Ashcroft and Grace being her daughter and kind of those Outbreak roots. And it's so Ashford and Ashcroft, I always get those names kind of confused. The Ashford, that's Alexia and Alfred, and then the Ashcroft, that's the that's where we're at now, and that's where the roots come from with Outbreak with Alyssa Ashcroft. And so yeah, regardless, it's kind of the funny thing though, where it's like weighing what you want personally to see from a franchise versus what makes sense. Like I really want to see Resident Evil 4 or Resident Evil's version of Metal Gear Solid 4, like 3-hour long cutscenes and just this epic crescendo. But it's like, dude, nobody else but me and like 8 other people in the world really want that. It's just, I don't know. I like Resident Evil lore a lot. And a part of me really, really wants to see like a big fucking, and Resident Evil 6 kind of did that, but I don't think it satisfied the majority of the Resident Evil fan base. I liked it, and it did feel like a big epic to me, but I don't know, if we're going to close out on the characters that we've grown to love over the last 30 years, let's do it in a big fucking blockbuster. Let's make it into a big ass event. So yeah, I don't know. But good news, with kind of going back to Resident Evil Code Veronica, good news that they're saying that it's going to be on par with like Resident Evil 4 in terms of quality. And I shouldn't say on par, like that wasn't the direct statement, but kind of in that vein of a Resident Evil 4 level of like, this is going fucking excellent. This thing is going to be excellent. Similar, comparable to some degree to Resident Evil 4. Like, I don't really even, I'm not overly surprised by that. I think people are going to be shocked by just how goddamn good Code Veronica, if they can correct some of the tonal imbalances with Code Veronica, I think people are going to be shocked. I genuinely do. That game has something to it. It really does, man. So, shout out Capcom. Cannot wait for RE9 and the future of Resident Evil at large. Take a drink of water real quick. All right. So Need for Speed is probably dead. There's the story, unfortunately. EA car culture website Speed Hunters is now closed, and Criterion Games has now been renamed as Battlefield Studio. That is just, that's so fucking bleak. Criterion has been renamed to Battlefield Studio. It's such a bummer. But I will say at the same time, Need for Speed Unbound sold horribly. Like, it debuted at number 8 in the best-selling games chart in the month it released. I think it was December of 2023 or 2022. It did pretty well on PlayStation with over 70% of the sales coming from PlayStation early on, but that's kind of the thing, right? Like, dude, this is a 30-year-old IP that PlayStation players grew up with, but outside of that audience of, once again, like 35 to 65-year-olds, I don't think anyone younger than that cares about Need for Speed anymore. And they definitely tried to become more appealing to a younger generation with Unbound, where, you know, they had like Travis Scott in there and some kind of anime aesthetics thrown in there, but it didn't move the needle. And sometimes I do wonder, like we always talk about, you know, games needing to shrink down and games needing to focus more and games needing to kind of get back to the roots and work on a smaller scale of production and have these kind of shrink from these $100+ million budgets to these $20 million, $30 million budgets and work in that sort of AA adjacent market. But I kind of do think with a brand like Need for Speed, with a game that went on to spawn a movie and a game that, I mean, has sold tens of millions of copies, I wouldn't be surprised if we're talking hundreds of millions of copies over its lifetime. Like, this has some sort of staying power, and I don't know. I'm not saying it's necessarily a good idea, but it's an idea that hit my head of like, why not make one Need for Speed blockbuster? You know, why not make, and it's funny talking about that right after talking about my desire for a Resident Evil big blockbuster style event, but why not make one Need for Speed, like really put the pedal to the metal, pun intended, I guess, but really try to put all of your effort, energy, and attention into just trying to create one like huge hit Need for Speed game. You know, where it's like, because I think back to like Mortal Kombat, and I guess that's on my mind now because of the Legacy Collection, but I think back to Mortal Kombat in the PS2 era where they were getting weird, man. You know, kart racing and kind of action RPGs and doing all of these weird things with the conquest modes and all of the creative characters, create a finisher, all of that sick ass shit that I loved. And you know, I don't know how much it moved the needle one way or the other. I think those games did pretty well, but I just wondered if you did something truly fucking wild with Need for Speed. Like, sure, you have your racing mode, career mode thing in there, but what if you just took it and made it into like this crazy Fast and Furious styled, you know, 7-8 hour campaign, like story mode? You have a story mode and like a career racing mode, but the story mode, like, what if you could get out of the car, and what if there, you know, you had this story of like a you know, really diving into it where it's this situation of being an undercover cop, or maybe you pick one scenario where you play as the undercover cop and you pick another scenario where you play as the leader of the street racing group. And I don't know, like, I'm not saying anything crazy, but 60% of the story mode could be racing, right? But then like 20% on foot stealth shit and on foot kind of maybe a couple shootouts throughout the course of the game. And then another 20% that are cutscenes, and just something to revitalize this franchise, something to just keep the name and keep the, like, do you really want to just get rid of Need for Speed? And then maybe what I'm suggesting probably doesn't make sense on a financial from a financial standpoint, on a financial level. But I do think that making one last Hail Mary fucking back of the end zone throw, to use terms that EA would be familiar with, like to really put it all into one last game before you figure out, do we really need to shut this thing down for good or not? Because that is a name that has some real weight behind it. Need for Speed, I mean, even the name is just so sick, you know? And I don't know. I who the fuck am I to say this? Because I you know, I'm definitely not one to be saying what executive decisions should be made. I'm not the best decision maker as is, but I would just try to throw one last Hail Mary. You know, one last big budget, crazy, crazy production for Need for Speed and see if you can really blow it out and make it something that tens of millions of people pick up again. But I don't know. Maybe that's not feasible anymore. On the other end, kind of directly countering everything I just said, Forza Horizon is not dead at all. Forza Horizon 6 Japan setting may have been leaked via now deleted Instagram post from Australian car import company Cult and Classic, referring to scanning Kai cars for the next game. Windows Central has seen documentation suggesting Forza Horizon 6 will be announced at this year's Tokyo Game Show, which is a great place to announce a Forza Horizon game that is set in Japan. It's wild to me to say everything I just said about Need for Speed needing to do 85 backflips and turn their game into Fast and Furious into this big budget action thing to stay relevant. And then you look at Forza and it's like, no, it's just a racing game still. Don't get me wrong, it's a photorealist, like god tier visuals, god tier open world experience, but it's still a fairly straightforward, just chill ass racing game with a cool ass rewind mechanic, which I think that does a lot of heavy lifting to get newcomers into the door, because it doesn't become this like annoying having to restart races, and like you're just having fun the entire time you're playing Forza Horizon. You're just having fun. And it's wild to see certain games in certain genres, can be on par with others in that space. And I'm not saying Need for Speed is on par with Forza Horizon. It's not. But it's close enough. And the disparity between the sales of Forza Horizon and the sales of Need for Speed, it's like staggering. It's drastic, the separation there. Forza Horizon 5 is the best-selling PS5 game of 2025 currently. It's a game that came out in 2021, and sure, there's a novelty aspect, but dude, Hi-Fi Rush already came over, Pentiment already came over, Sea of Thieves already came over. None of those games were the best-selling games of the respective year that they got ported over. Like, Forza Horizon just has it, and I hate that I don't know what it is. And yeah, once again, that's something that you have to start recognizing as you get older, that you don't have your finger on the pulse of it. There is something that when you're younger, you just understand it. The younger people are influencing the music. They're influencing the culture. What they like is the it thing. And when you get older, it's like, I don't even understand what it is anymore. Like, what makes Forza Horizon so fucking appealing over the rest of the racing game market is you're seeing racing games just bottom out and finding little to no success in the current game market. But Forza Horizon just crushes it. I mean, they just had to shutter Forza Motorsport, the studio there. And obviously that's a sim racer, but even like Gran Turismo 7 didn't light the world on fire when it came out. And once again, you're in the sim space, but Need for Speed is absolutely not a sim racer, and Unbound was very, very much in the arcadey space, didn't light the world on fire. And it's just something about Forza Horizon. It just has it. And I know that's horrible analysis on my part, but I don't really know. I don't know how to break this down and be like, okay, well, Need for Speed, look at what Forza's doing, and this is the things that you should copy. Like, sure, a rewind mechanic, but come on, guys. Like, is that going to be the thing? Adding in a rewind mechanic, is that going to be the thing that pushes Need for Speed from 4 million copies sold to 24? Like, probably not. And so, yeah, it's just, because you even look at, like, I look at something like Banisher's Ghost of New Eden versus a game like Ghost of Tsushima. And I love Ghost of Tsushima, but is it 10 million copies, 12 million copies sold versus Banishers of probably, 2 million? I don't even know if Banishers cracked 1 million copies sold. So is it like 9 times better? Like, I don't know. I don't know if it's 9 times a better video game than Banisher's Ghost of New Eden. I think Banisher's Ghost of New Eden in certain areas is better than Ghost of Tsushima, but Tsushima definitely has better combat. But I'd take the story in Banishers all day over Ghost of Tsushima. And it's like they're very similar games, and obviously one has the PlayStation marketing behind it, and that's going to help sell millions of copies. But and sure, Microsoft marketing is behind Forza, but EA, it's not like EA is some kind of slouch in the marketing department either. But yeah, it's it is just it's wild. It really is wild not to be able to, and it's just something that starts fading as you get older. Like, I can't really explain it, but I just don't have the ability anymore to see ahead into the future to like understand like what the it thing is going to be. What's the game that's going to come through and be the breakout hit of the year? And it's like whenever I can see it, it's from an old ass man's viewpoint, where like I see college football coming around and coming back for the first time in 10 years last year, and I'm like, yeah, that's going to be the best selling game of 2024. But it's because of all the old man isms in my head, where it's like, well, it used to be one of the best selling games back in the day, and there's been a 10-year wait, and college football is appealing to everybody of all generations. And yeah, I don't know. It's just interesting. It is interesting watching that ability to understand the next big thing and what it's going to be kind of fade as you get older. It's a wild thing to witness. Skate has a release date, and or actually I should say, let me be clear. Skate's release date will be announced on August 26th, and it has like some new concept art, and I'll throw the new concept art in the video for y'all. But yeah, they're gonna get their official release date announcement on August 26th, and man, I am just praying that at the end of this release date announcement, it cuts to an FMV of the opening, and having like Rob Dyrdek or Eric Costin, and then, you know, those old school guys who were featured prominently in the FMV openings back in the day for, you know, Skate 1, 2, and 3. And those FMV openings were so iconic because you knew you were about to get into a wacky, fun, silly story. And I don't know. If they can just announce that they are working on a single player version of Skate, or even if it's like a $20 paid expansion in the live service game that they're creating, and you know, we have to wait another year. Like, say they roll out the live service game and it has the features that you expect from a live service game, and open world, and different fucking microtransactions and skins and daily tasks and all of your horse shit. If they can just announce alongside that hey, we haven't forgot, once again, the old ass man in me, we haven't forgot our old ass fans out there, and we want to give y'all a cool single player story, and but it's gonna take us some time and to get this done. We're gonna roll these out in $20 increments, like every 6 months, every year even. I'll pay $20 a year to play a new Skate campaign, even if it's only like 3-4 hours long. I don't see myself. I will jump into this. I will play Skate, like this weird live service free to play horseshit, but I can't say I'm excited to. I'll play any fucking extreme sports game, but I just don't have that like level of excitement at all for this. I'll be kind of begrudgingly jumping into it just to see how it is compared to the other Skate games, and kind of report back to y'all with my findings as I jump into this free to play thing. But I want a decent little story. You know, I want to go and fucking do tricks for a magazine and have like, and you can roll that stuff out through a live service, but it's just annoying. Like, it's just an annoying way to engage with a game. Having your world populated with other people, and once again, old ass man. This is some old ass man behavior that I am showcasing right now, but that's just kind of how I feel. It's like, I don't want to fucking deal with y'all. I just want to chill and play this thing. Just give me a 7-hour story where I can be on the cover of magazines and create my character and do some tricks and fucking hire Big Black is my security guard to go and throw, as as you're getting trounced by the different fucking police officers and shit who are telling you got to get out of this mall, this complex that you're grinding on fucking statues, and then they're trying to surround you and throw you out of the building, and you call up Big Black Boykin. Isn't that his name? Big Black Boykin? The Rob Dyrdek and Robin Big, right? Damn. Fucking memory. Once again, this is just, I should title this just fucking Brandon realizes he's getting fucking old. But yeah, calling up Big Black to throw out to just kind of protect you as you're committing crimes inside of these different facilities and shit. Like, I don't know. Skate back in the day was such a breath of fresh air because we had, the Tony Hawk games were something so different from Skate. And this was just such a breath of fresh air coming in and having a more semi-style of skateboarding experience. And nothing has been able to replicate it. I've tried Session. I've tried all of the games that have come out in the wake of Skate and tried to ape that formula, ape those mechanics. None of them does. They just don't do it like Skate did it. And yeah, so I was going to say cautiously optimistic, but I'm not even that. I'm hopeful that I'm proven wrong on this one. But yeah, man, that is the news for the day. I appreciate y'all so much for tuning in. Appreciate y'all so much for stopping by. If you enjoy the content and you would like to support further, you can head on over to patreon.com/unnecessaryrambling and check out the content. I will have it pinned in the comment down below. YouTube memberships are available as well if you prefer to support via the YouTube membership program. Exclusive videos are available on Patreon and for the YouTube members. Weekly Q&A for the Friday show for the Ramble Report. And yeah, bunch of other shit over there as well that you can go and check out if you feel so inclined to do so. But yeah, appreciate y'all so much for stopping by. And hit me in the comments with your thoughts on any of these breaking news items. I'm curious to hear y'all's thoughts on Code Veronica. Kind of looking really good, man. I'm so damn excited for Code Veronica. And also, like, Need for Speed. What the fuck do you think should be done with Need for Speed? I feel like I'm wrong in my assessment of that, of like making it this big budget thing. But I'm curious to hear y'all's take on all that. So hit me up in the comments and I shall shoot the breeze with you all. Appreciate you guys. See you soon. Goodbye.